In the beginning, there was a child named Jeffrey Dahmer, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on May 21st, 1960. His parents, Lionel and Joyce Dahmer, were initially overjoyed with their new addition, unaware of the twisted path their son's life would eventually take. Lionel Dahmer, a chemist by profession, was a man of science, and it was from him that young Jeffrey inherited his fascination with the inner workings of things. Yet, where Lionel was interested in molecules and compounds, Jeffrey's curiosity took a macabre turn. He developed a peculiar fascination with dead animals, often collecting roadkill to dissect in the privacy of his own little world. This obsession, disturbing as it was, could have been seen as a child's misguided interest in biology, had it not been for the feelings of isolation and alienation that characterized his school years. Jeffrey Dahmer was a loner. He struggled to fit in, to understand the social cues that seemed to come so naturally to his peers. His classmates recall him as an oddball, someone who would fake epileptic seizures or mimic the slurred speech of those with cerebral palsy just for a laugh. Yet beneath these antics was a deep-seated sense of solitude, a young boy grappling with feelings of inadequacy and rejection. His parents' turbulent marriage added to his feelings of isolation. The constant arguing, the evident lack of harmony in his home, further alienated him from his peers, from normalcy. His mother Joyce, plagued with mental health issues, was often incapable of providing the emotional support young Jeffrey so desperately needed. Yet it was during these formative years, amidst the turmoil and loneliness, that the seeds of Dahmer's dark future were sown. His fascination with death, his struggle with isolation and the turmoil of his home life all contributed to the creation of the monster he would later become. Even from an early age, there were signs of the darkness that would later consume Dahmer's life. As Dahmer grew older, his fascination with death intensified, leading him down a dangerous path. Imagine being a mere 18, on the cusp of adulthood, yet being consumed by such morbid curiosity. This was the reality for Jeffrey Dahmer. His first taste of murder came at this tender age, a shocking act that would forever change the course of his life. The victim was a hitchhiker, a young man named Stephen Hicks. His only mistake was crossing paths with Dahmer, who invited him home under the guise of companionship. The encounter ended in tragedy, with Dahmer taking the life of the unsuspecting Hicks. He later confessed that he couldn't bear the thought of Hicks leaving him, a twisted fear that drove him to commit this heinous act. Afterwards, Dahmer was overwhelmed by a mix of guilt and fear. He was astounded at the monstrous act he had committed and terrified of the consequences should his secret be discovered. To cope with these feelings, he turned to alcohol, seeking solace in the numbing effects of intoxication. His early adulthood was characterized by a rapid descent into alcoholism. He was frequently inebriated, a state that allowed him to escape from the horrors of his actions. But it also isolated him, as he pushed away anyone who tried to get close, afraid they might uncover his dark secret. Yet the alcohol wasn't enough to quell his deranged desires. Over time, his fascination with death evolved into a perverse need to control and possess his victims, a need that would escalate into a series of horrifying murders. His life had become a grim cycle of drinking and killing, a descent into a darkness from which there was no return. And so, haunted by his first murder and driven by his macabre obsessions, Dahmer slipped further and further into a world where the lines between life and death, sanity and madness were terrifyingly blurred. This was just the beginning of Dahmer's chilling journey into the world of murder and madness. In the late 80s and early 90s, Dahmer's killing spree reached its peak, with him committing unspeakable acts of violence. Jeffrey Dahmer, dubbed the Milwaukee Cannibal, had a particular modus operandi that set him apart from other serial killers. His victims were not chosen at random. Instead, Dahmer had a specific preference for young, attractive men, often of a certain racial background. The young men who crossed paths with Dahmer were lured into his lair with promises of money or simply a place to hang out. Little did they know their fate had been sealed the moment they caught Dahmer's eye. Once ensnared in his web, the victims were subjected to a nightmarish ordeal. Dahmer didn't just kill his victims, he experimented with them. He was fascinated by the idea of having total control over another human being. It was this obsession that led him to attempt creating what he called a zombie. He aimed to keep his victims with him forever, not just in death, but in a state of compliant, docile existence. To achieve this, Dahmer employed a variety of horrifying methods. He experimented with drugs, chemicals, and even attempted crude forms of brain surgery on his still-living victims. His grim experiments were carried out with a chilling detachment, viewing his victims not as human beings, but as objects for his personal experimentation. However, as the body count grew, so did Dahmer's desperation. His killing spree was not just about satisfying his depraved desires, it was a form of self-expression, a way for him to exert control over a world that he felt had rejected him. Each victim was a testament to his power, a macabre trophy of his twisted dominance. Despite the gruesome nature of his crimes, Dahmer remained a paradox. He was both a monster, capable of horrific violence, and a tragically troubled individual whose warped perception of love and control led him down a path of devastating destruction. For Dahmer, his killing spree became a twisted form of self-expression, a way to exert control over a world that he felt had rejected him. In 1991, Dahmer's reign of terror came to an end when he was finally arrested and brought to justice. The circumstances of Dahmer's arrest were as chilling as the man himself. It was a hot summer night when two police officers responded to a call from two women who had found a distressed and disoriented young man on the street. Little did they know, they were about to uncover one of the most gruesome crime scenes in American history. Upon returning the young man to Dahmer's apartment, the officers noticed a collection of photographs depicting dismembered bodies. The apartment, a macabre gallery of Dahmer's horrific deeds, was filled with evidence of his unspeakable crimes. Polaroids of victims, tools used for dismemberment, and remains of his victims were found, painting a grim picture of his sadistic tendencies. As news of Dahmer's arrest spread, a media frenzy ensued. Reporters from around the world descended upon Milwaukee, hungry for every gruesome detail. Dahmer's face was splashed across newspapers and television screens, his name on the lips of every American. The public watched in morbid fascination as the Milwaukee cannibal was brought to trial. The trial was a spectacle like no other. Dahmer, a man who had successfully evaded capture for 13 long years, was now in the spotlight, his every move scrutinized. The courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of dread as Dahmer pleaded guilty but insane to 15 counts of murder. The testimonies that followed laid bare the full extent of his atrocities, each one more horrifying than the last. Throughout the trial, Dahmer's chilling indifference was evident. His lack of remorse, coupled with the gruesome details of his crimes, sent shockwaves through the courtroom and beyond. The trial served as a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. Dahmer's trial revealed the full extent of his horrific crimes, shocking the world and cementing his place in the annals of true crime. As the gavel fell, marking the end of one of the most infamous trials in American history, the world was left to grapple with the chilling reality of Jeffrey Dahmer's monstrous deeds. Dahmer's life and crimes have left a lasting impact on the world of true crime, and his story continues to fascinate and horrify us to this day. After his arrest, Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison, but his time behind bars was cut short. Dahmer met his end in November 1994, when he was brutally killed by a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. While Dahmer's life came to an abrupt end, the ripple effects of his monstrous actions lingered. The families of his victims bore the brunt of this pain, carrying the weight of their loved ones' untimely deaths. They grappled with the loss, the trauma, and the public scrutiny that followed, forever marked by Dahmer's horrifying acts. But Dahmer's legacy extends beyond the personal devastation he wrought. His case prompted significant changes in law enforcement practices. The missteps in Dahmer's case, including the return of Conorak's synthesome phone to Dahmer, despite pleas from bystanders, led to a public outcry and a call for better police training. Law enforcement agencies across the country began to re-evaluate their procedures, striving to ensure that such a catastrophic failure would not happen again. Moreover, Dahmer's case brought the dark underbelly of society into the harsh light of day. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about mental illness, human vulnerability, and the capacity for evil within us all. His story, as chilling as it is, serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and understanding in our society. Dahmer's life and crimes have become a part of our collective consciousness, a chilling tale that continues to captivate and appall. His name has become synonymous with the worst of human nature, a symbol of the darkness that can dwell within. Jeffrey Dahmer's story serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul. Thank you for watching.